Right. Right, so welcome everybody to the next in the series of Talk to the Hiring Manager. We have one of our very own from the triage team with us today, who brought a wealth of experience around wider CRM and sort of more sophisticated solution implementations, and really helped with quite a few of the charities, building their understanding them and getting them to sort of think a little bit more about what they're asking. Sadly, we have lost Olga to a evil corporate for a little while, but we do hope to lure her back. By all means, guys, ask any questions. We really appreciate your time and joining us today, Olga. And over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So as John said, I'm Olga Harvey. I spent December to April with Scottish Tech Army with the triage team, which was very interesting and very valuable experience in my eyes. It's something I've never done before. I've kind of dedicated my life to the corporate world and big enterprises, and it was the only experience I've had of working with the non-profit organization, which I think kind of opens your horizon. And I think it's definitely a very valuable experience, and I would literally recommend it to everyone. So I am currently Director of Operations and EMEA Chief of Staff in the Office of the President in Zendesk. Zendesk is an American-based corporation with offices all over the world, and we provide cloud-based help desk solutions. So my background, just to give you a bit of an overview, I have a degree in engineering and information systems management, and I spent first 11 years of my career in Oracle Corporation, again, American-based, worked globally in a variety of countries and mainly looking after the operational side of things. So I've worked on establishing shared service center, then went over into running operations for UK, Ireland, South Africa, and Israel with annual turnover about $450 million at the time. And after 11 years in Oracle, I switched my career to the delivery and concentrated on financial institutions and banking, delivery of enterprise software and CRM systems, usually multi-million-dollar, multi-year programs with up to 100 people and more in terms of the resources, usually the programs which contain implementation of existing software and development piece as well. So currently, I'm responsible for delivery of strategic initiatives for $300 million business in EMEA, and I'm supporting the president and senior vice president of sales. We have about 350 people across EMEA region and about 1,500 across the globe. So obviously, over the course of my life, being in different positions and different situations, I have hired quite a number of people and obviously interviewed even more. And at the moment, in my current role, I conduct the interviews from the technical architect level all the way up to the vice president level. So I'm usually part of the interview screening and interview process. So what I would say, firstly, obviously, is the hardest part in nowadays world is to get your CV picked out of the bunch. I'll give you an example. When I applied for the job I have right now, there was 350 candidates for the same job, and only 5 of them were selected for the first round interview. So that gives you kind of a flavor of what's going on, and especially the names which are well known will have more and more number of applicants, and that goes globally, especially with the situation with the COVID right now. More and more jobs become remote, so that extends the pool of applicants, and to a certain extent, it makes it harder because we used to be dedicated to specific areas where we are. Nowadays, we don't really look where the people are located. It's more country basis and regional basis. So first of all, what I would say is that when you are putting your CV together, you need to keep in mind that the first point of touch with your CV will be the machine. And the majority of the corporations now, to a certain extent, obviously the bigger companies has more sophisticated software, the smaller companies has less sophisticated software, but it's readily available, it's relatively cheap, so most of the companies now employ that. So how do you trick the software and picking you out of the bunch? And that's a difficult task. In my opinion, there is two tricks up my sleeve, which I have used before, both of them. First one is to actually work with a company who creates CV. I know it's some investment of money and it's controversial. Some people prefer not to do it, but I have done it before in my life. And I think that does help in that first level of interaction with the machine, because the companies who are reputable and who has been on the market for quite a while, they are capable of creating your CV and optimizing it for the machine pickup. So they will give you a chance to actually get screened and get to that first point of touch where you actually touch a human, because it's much easier to impress the human than the machine. Second point and second trick up my sleeve is actually use internal referrals. Again, in my experience and in our company as well, which is a good example, if anyone from inside the company refers an outsider, that CV goes up on the pile. So before reviewing everyone who applied externally without referral, we will review people with internal referral. So if you know anyone who works in the company you target, who works in the company you want to deal with and you want to work for, try to reach out. Maybe you have been colleagues before, maybe you have people in common, you know, ask for referral. It does help. And it does give you that, again, first level of human interaction, which can help enormously in getting through that first round. So increases your chances. The other thing about CV, I would say, is that the CV needs to be concise. I know a lot of people kind of say that, and I totally agree with this. I'll give you an example. Last week, I've interviewed someone whose CV was 7 pages long. The guy was brilliant, and I interviewed him on the second round. So he already went through the machine, through the talent acquisition screening, and then kind of got to me. But the point is that when I was preparing to interview him, I looked through page 1 and read through it. I scanned through page 2, and I had paid no attention to what was after. Keep that in mind when you're creating your CV. Past page 2, no one really is going to read through that. At the end of the day, when I'm selecting the candidates, for example, for the next level, or when I'm preparing to talk to them, I would not pay attention to where they were 15 years ago. I will look at the name of the company and the title, but I would not look for their achievements. However, last 6-7 years, yes, they are important. That this is the main point where you need to concentrate and where you need to put information in on as much as possible. So the more you dedicate your time and effort to describing those last 5-6 years, the more chances you have to get picked for the next round and to get selected. The other thing from the CV perspective is obviously having a statement in it. So what are you actually applying for? Make sure you tailor your CV to the job you're applying for and to the company. I know it's trivia, but at the same time, I know people who don't do that, and it is noticeable. When you are a hiring manager, when you're looking through the CV pool, you know if people actually know what your company does and if they know what the job is about and if they're striving to join you. So make sure you pay attention to that first statement, which is usually 5-6 sentences. Now moving over to the interviews. Obviously nowadays, and no one knows how long it's going to go for, everything is done by Zoom or any other video conference and equipment. There are pros and cons, in my opinion, and personal interaction is slightly more difficult in the Zoom environment. However, at the same time, when you're doing Zoom, you yourself as a person who is applying for a job, you are in your comfortable environment. You're within your own home. You can have your own cup of tea. You can have your water, whatever you want around you. And that can help you it can help to put you at ease. And I think that's quite important and quite important to be aware of it. It's not really an environment where you come into someone's office where people don't know you. You are interacting with the screen, so it's difficult to create a rapport, but at the same time, you can have some kind of comforting things around you, which can calm you down, calm the nerves, which obviously everyone gets when they get interviewed. My suggestion for the interview is start your interview with a small question when you join in the Zoom. make a joke, talk about the weather. Again, Scotland, it's always the good weather conversation. It always goes well. That creates the ease for you. You kind of get yourself relaxed, and that also puts your interview at ease, and you show that you're actually a human. We all, at the end of the day, in majority of cases, we select people not just on their abilities and their CV and what they've done in the past, but also if you build that human connection, and you have a very short period of time to do it. So use it wisely and make sure that the interviews in our company, for example, can be half an hour long, 45 minutes or an hour. We don't usually do anything over an hour. It's a quite short period of time to create a rapport. So just, as I said, make a joke, ask the person who's interviewing you, how was your day? Sometimes it's a Monday and it's crazy, or sometimes it's a Friday and everyone is just waiting for the Saturday, for the Friday night to come over and have a relaxing time with their family. That will make you memorable. The other thing I would probably say is that keep in mind that in my scenarios, that you're allowed to have notes with you. It's not really frowned upon, or there is no stipulation on, it's not an exam at the end of the day. So you are allowed to have papers with you. You are allowed to have your CV or any notes you made on the company. That's absolutely fine. And it's not a problem in any shape or form. But make sure when you go into the skills interviews, and especially the technical skills interviews, that you don't spend time, and I have seen people doing that, trying to find the answer to the questions you don't know the answer to. It is noticeable to the interviewer. You will see it straight away. And as someone who's done it quite a lot of times, you can catch it in a second. If there is a skills interview and you don't know something, you've been asked something you don't know the answer to, try to come up with a solution how you will find the answer. So if I am interviewing someone and they say, okay, I don't know that, but this is how I will go about this, I will still consider that person. Not knowing something is not a crime. Not being able to suggest how you will go about finding the answer is a completely different story. So that will give you a kind of bonus points if you can explain, if you don't know the answer, but can explain how you will go about finding one. The other thing I would say is research the company. Again, as someone who's done plenty of interviews, I know more or less straight away when you ask a person, and it's quite a typical question on the interview, what do you know about us? Why us? I do know when the answer is just out of the book from reading the snapshot on Google, or if you have actually looked into what company does, how we perform, where we have offices, what regions we cover, what type of clients we work with. This is all very easy. It takes some of your time of preparation, but make sure you invest your time and your effort into this preparation, because that will show that you're actually interested to work for us. Not just generally work for anyone who will give you a job. And this is how, in some cases, the decisions are made. We have been in the situations where we have candidates of more or less the same caliber, but the decision is made based on that personal attributes or something personal they said during the interview. And that goes back to researching the company. In a lot of companies nowadays, especially the bigger ones, they will have masses of information on their websites. If you look it up, if you go to the career section, they will have cheat sheets, they will have suggestions for the interview, they will have videos in a lot of cases, which you can look through and read through on your preparation cycle. Make sure you use it. They are there for a reason. They will make your life easier and make your preparation easier. The other thing, actually, from the getting selected perspective, just coming back a little bit, is which I have used before and it does work, is that subscribing to the company events. On LinkedIn specifically, there is quite a lot of advertisement about virtual coffees nowadays, obviously again COVID related, and women in technology events, for example, or people in programming events and stuff like that. Can put a list together of the companies you're interested to work for, target them, subscribe to the news on LinkedIn, and follow what happened. I have been, usually what happens on the events, like for example, the virtual coffee event, when people come in and usually it's marketing people, sales people, and talk about their company, they will ask you to submit your CV when you're registering for an event. I have been approached by the companies post those events, usually about a month or two later, by their recruitment departments saying, oh, we found your CV from that event you have attended. Can you come and talk to us? I think that's very useful, and it's becoming more and more apparent that this does help. Now, the actual interview question. Again, my background is technology companies, so I'm kind of probably slightly biased in that respect, but technology companies like to ask funny questions. Like, for example, the most popular question Google asks in the interviews is, how do you calculate how many golf balls you can fit in Boeing 474? The point there is that myself as an interviewer, I don't care how many golf balls we can fit in the airplane. It really makes no difference to me. What I'm looking for in the questions like that is to get your creative thinking going, to get understanding of how would you approach the problem which is happening in your day-to-day life, in your work life. So there is no correct answer. There is actually no answer to that question. But what I would be looking at is that how you're approaching the issue. What questions do you ask? So when the questions like that is said on the example of the Google is asked, usually what Google is expecting you to say is that, okay, do you have seats in the airplane or is it empty? Do you have people in the airplane or is it empty? So your creative thinking and your ability to look at the problem from the outside of the box, that's what I'm looking for. And as I said, there is no right or wrong answer. The other interesting question, and we use in our interviews process, and I have been asked before, is do you prefer working in the team or do you prefer to be an individual contributor? There is no right or wrong answer to that. The only thing I'm looking for is to understand who you are as a person and how you approach your day-to-day work life. That's it. There is really nothing that you can say which is wrong in here. I'm just trying to understand who you are. And again, that question, for example, in my experience, we have had the situation where the person applied for one job, and then when the answer, a proper dedicated answer came out of his mouth on the interview to that question, we actually swapped him and put him forward for a different job because we thought that his personality and abilities and skills will be more fitted in the different department. So think about that and approach the interview from the point of view that there is no right and wrong answer. The only right and wrong answers can be really in the case of the technical skills interview, but even there, if you show the interviewer how you would approach it and what you will do, you can always kind of dig your way out of it if there is something which is you really feeling like you're failing at. Excuse me. The other one, good question, and again, the question we ask everyone is that where you see yourself in 5 years. I do not expect you to work for me in 5 years. I'm not looking for someone who will say to me, oh, I want to be in your department in 5 years' time and still be doing the same job I'm applying for. This is really not about that. What I'm trying to understand is who you are. What are your aspirations? What are your inspirations? Where are you striving to be in your future? You don't need to give me the step-by-step plan where you get into. I just want to get to know you better. All those questions, they to a certain extent feel like they're not job related, but they are, because we're working with humans, we're choosing personalities. And in some cases, personality can outweigh the knowledge level. And finally, the final part of the interview is the questions part. And that thing I think is quite important to keep in mind is that make sure you prepare the questions. Make sure you think through what you want to know about myself, about our department, about the company, about our aspirations. It's really your chance to get to know you. Don't forget that interviewing process, at the end of the day, obviously, if you're applying for a job, you're looking for one, but it's a two-way street. We're selecting you, but you're selecting us. Maybe there is something you don't like. I've been in this situation, again, myself, from my own experience, where I have been in the interview and I got all the way through to the company owner, then started talking to him. And when we got to the question part, I've started asking him, okay, so where do you see yourself? Where do you see the company going? And realized that there was no vision at all. So they were doing really well. They were creating massive revenue. They were getting VC funding, but there was nothing after that. They just lucked out. So they got lucky, got something going, but didn't know where it was going. There was no vision or understanding of that, or even analysis on that. So obviously that was straight away for me a no, because I'm not joining the company who doesn't know where they're going within the next 12 months. So you need to remember that interview process and that application process, as I said, it's a two-way street. Don't forget that you are selecting the company, and you need to make sure that you feel that this will be a good fit. And asking questions is the point where you kind of dedicate your time and effort into finding that out. The other thing, probably last thing I want to add, is that when you're looking at the advertisement of the job, keep in mind stuff like 28 days holidays is not a benefit. It's a legal requirement. So the companies who advertise it as a benefit, it's just, that's not true. Or pension, again, in the UK, it's a legal requirement. It's not a benefit. Stuff like when people say, oh, laptop again, and nowadays in the COVID world, it's not a benefit. It's the only tool we have to conduct our work. So be careful then when you choose the company and when you choose where you apply to, that you look for stuff like flexible and remote working. That's a benefit. Company who dedicate their time and effort into the mental health, it's a benefit. Company who subsidize stuff like gyms, access to the mental support, financial services, stuff like that. Yes, they are real benefits, and that's where the company gives back to the people they hire. For example, learning and learning support and development. We in our company has a dedicated budget for every single employee across the globe, no matter where you're based, which is fixed number per year, which you can spend on your own learning courses, and it can be anything. You can go and learn cooking, or you can go and learn business modeling. It actually makes no difference to us. We just do it from our perspective. This is how we invest into our people, and this is how we develop to our people. So I think that this is important things to keep in mind when you're doing that selection process and what you're going for the conversation. That's everything from me. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer if there is anything I can help you with.
Brilliant. Thank you, Olga. I will open it up to the floor. There were quite a few good points there. Anybody have any questions? Oh, no. What I will do now is stop the recording, because sometimes people ask questions after the recording. So